Hey New York. We're big fans here at the B1M. We're a construction channel, so, you know, we love your work.
We just saw Hugh Jackman walk by.
That time you lifted a historic theatre 9 metres off the ground. Or the massive skyscraper you built on top of an active rail line. We even defended the vessel when everyone else said it was rubbish. But we've got to talk about the subway. It's not like other subways. It's special. Other subways might look like this. Instead of this. You might even hear something like this.
A company in Japan is apologizing after one of its trains left 20 seconds early.
Instead of this.
One of hundreds of passengers stuck inside an F train with no air conditioning or light for nearly an hour.
And it's okay, like we get it. It has its benefits too. No world-famous artist ever made their name on the Hong Kong MTR, and you've never seen the Riyadh Metro on the cover of a seminal album. And it's great that there's this massive multi-billion-dollar plan to make the subway, you know, normal. But we were just wondering, is it going to work?
On my life, that's Hugh Jackman. That's Hugh Jackman.
This isn't a museum. This is where the spare parts are kept for the New York subway's ancient signalling system. Other networks don't have anything like this, but then the New York subway isn't like other subways. Take Hong Kong's MTR. On average, it carries 5 million people a day with a 99.9% punctuality rate. The 3 million New Yorkers that use the subway every day aren't so lucky. In 2024, over 40,000 delays were reported on just one line.
What could go wrong with a train? It's on tracks! There's no traffic! How could a train get stuck?
But we're being a bit unfair because the subway has lots of challenges that other networks don't have to deal with. First off, it's massive, more than 2.5 times the length of the London Underground, and it has the second most number of stations in the world after Beijing. It also runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. In fact, the New York subway has only closed down 13 times in its entire history.
When the transit wheels grind to a stop in New York City, it's worldwide news.
Including that one time Conan O'Brien drove a bus.
Keep your hands inside the window at all times. Is that okay?
So we can forgive it for being a bit careworn. But help is coming down the tracks in the form of the inspiringly named 25-2029 Capital Plan. Announced by MTA CEO Janno Lieber in September 2024, this is the single biggest spending plan in New York's history. A whopping $68.4 billion is being given to the Metropolitan Transit Authority, which runs the subway. It's great news for places like this, Brooklyn's Smith 9th Street Station.
At more than 87 feet, this is the tallest station in the city. Commuters must take 2 long escalators and then 2 flights of stairs.
Nicknamed the Mount Everest of subway stations, it's finally getting an elevator. The plan also means it's out with trains like this and in with trains like this. This is an R211 that began operating in the Bronx earlier this year. It has wider doors, digital screens, and enhanced security features like cameras in each car and an open gangway. Trains like this are going to replace the MTA's ancient fleet of R46 and R44 trains on 6 lines. Unbelievably, these trains entered service back in the 1970s and are notorious for breaking down. On average, an R46 train fails every 46,000 miles, whereas its shiny new replacement can roll on for 220,000 miles without fault, which should go some way to solving one of the subway's most notorious problems. Because ask any New Yorker the worst thing about the subway and they'll say it's not the rats, not the people shucking oysters, or the occasional flood, it's the endless delays.
No A, B, C, D, E, M, F train at this station.
Which has a lot to do with this. But before we get into that, how did we end up in this situation in the first place? Well, the last time the subway hit a low like this was during the 1970s. Decades of underfunding and a financial crisis in the wider city left the subway on the brink of collapse. As the network became a byword for crime and vandalism, New Yorkers abandoned it in droves. In 1977, it recorded the lowest number of riders since the First World War. But then, in the 1980s, all that began to change. Billions of dollars was poured in through a massive capital program that replaced cars, rebuilt stations, and tackled the graffiti crisis head-on.
Today we got better equipment, better parts, and better tools.
By the 1990s, ridership was higher than ever, and New York once again had a world-class subway system.
They put in a new escalator downstairs, they fixed this whole station beautifully. They're working very hard.
But the good times weren't to last long. See, ever since various companies that made up the subway were taken into public ownership in 1940, funding's been patchy at best. And by the mid-90s, just as subway trains were doing a victory lap, things were yet again about to grind to a halt. Now, it'll take forever to go through everything that doomed the subway over the next couple of decades. So let's take a quick ride on the express train to financial ruin. We depart at City Hall in 1994 when Mayor Rudy Giuliani cut $400 million from the MTA's budget. That gave the green light to others at city and state level to do the same, and in 1997 its federal funding was cut entirely. Next stop, Wall Street, where some very clever bankers had the great idea of lending the MTA money. $85 million in fees and commissions later, the MTA had lots of cash and lots of debt. In the 2000s, the MTA was spending more on debt fees than on maintenance, so the fabric of the network began to fall apart. When the 2008 crash came along, even more money left the network. Then came vanity projects like Fulton Street Station, where $1.4 billion was pumped into a single station without any money for new cars or basic maintenance. Even weirder, the MTA had to bail out a ski resort at one point. Things were looking up in 2017 when Governor Andrew Cuomo declared a state of emergency on the subway. On came Transport Supremo Andy Byford with a huge plan to sort out the crippled network once and for all. New Yorkers were so impressed, they nicknamed him Train Daddy, but he quit a couple of years later after Cuomo stripped him of all his powers. That leaves us where we are now, and it explains how you get to a situation like this.
When any modernization is going on, we try to make sure that we scavenge to retain the parts so that we can provide replacement for those that remain in service.
With the exception of all but two lines, the subway runs on this, fixed block signalling. This is where the track is split up into blocks. When a train enters a block, the system flags it as occupied. It keeps traffic at a safe distance by creating a buffer zone behind it, which following trains can't enter. It's one of the oldest ways of managing traffic on railways, and it is very safe. What it's not is efficient. The blocks vary in length, and there's no direct communication between the signaller and the driver, which means no one really knows exactly where a train is. Because of that, the system is inherently overcautious and doesn't allow for a high frequency of trains. In other words, it's safe, but slow and boring, a bit like the Gunther of train signalling stations.
Remind me to review with you which part is decaf and which is regular.
But it's being replaced with the Chandler Bing of subway scheduling, communication-based train control.
Does this mean we're going to have to start paying for coffee?
Okay, maybe not the best metaphor, but anyway, with communications-based train control, trains send their location, speed and direction directly to the controller. This means a buffer can be created around the moving train, reducing the amount of empty space on the track, and allowing other trains to travel more closely and at higher frequency. 75 miles of CBTC signalling is being installed on 9 lines over the next 4 years. And in case you're not convinced, this system is already bearing fruit elsewhere on the network. Starting in the early 2000s, the L and 7 lines were both upgraded with CBTC and have since gone on to become the most reliable lines on the network, with on-time performance hitting over 90%. Another major upgrade, which might not be quite as popular, are these new ticket barriers. In 2021, the MTA lost over $1 billion in revenue due to fare dodging.
Are there any cops around? You guys not cops, right?
No, we're not cops.
That's been helped by the subway's ancient turnstiles and walls. A pilot scheme for the new gates began in 2024. There are still several options being looked at, but the MTA has declared that progress is being made. Turnstile jumping is down 60% at stations where shields and fins have been installed, and the MTA announced a 30% network-wide drop in fare evasion from the end of 2024 to the start of 2025. As significant as the lost revenue from fare dodgers is, it's not the only problem the subway faces. A full quarter of the funding for the new capital plan comes from a hugely controversial congestion charge.
Drivers are charged up to $9 when they enter Manhattan at or below 60th Street.
Since the charge was introduced in January, it's become a lightning rod for political challenges and lawsuits from some very high-profile New Yorkers.
The tolls that went into effect in January ordered to be shut down by President Trump last Wednesday. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy calling the plan a, quote, slap in the face.
In February this year, the Trump administration took the MTA to court in an attempt to cancel the tax. A number of other lawsuits at the state level, including 8 from New Jersey, are currently working their way through the courts.
Officials in New Jersey are not giving up their fight to stop congestion pricing just days before it is set to take effect.
It's tempting to see the toll as an easy target, but New Jersey's lawsuits cut deep. For commuters on the other side of the Hudson that make up 250,000 daily car trips into the city, getting in by rail is hardly an option. NJ Transit is underfunded, overcrowded, and notoriously unreliable. And the century-old tunnels into Penn Station creak under the strain of hundreds of thousands of riders every day.
It's like a hell. Yeah, but like unpredictable schedule, like gambling every day.
From their perspective, they're being asked to stump up for the MTA's problems while their own rail system is falling apart. An injunction has allowed the city to continue to collect the toll pending the outcome of the lawsuit. But should it lose, there's no clear plan to replace the single biggest portion of the budget. And to top it all off, some question whether the huge $68 billion price tag is going to be enough. The new CBTC signalling system has worked wonders where it's been rolled out, but it's come at a huge cost. The number 7 line upgrade ran 5 years over schedule and $157 million over budget. And similar upgrades currently underway on other lines are already years behind schedule. It seems almost inevitable that this upgrade plan will run into the same trap, because New York has some of the highest construction costs anywhere in the world. Building anything here takes longer and costs far more than it should, and the reasons are baked into the system. Labour rules, restrictive procurement processes, and layers of bureaucracy all add years and billions to even the simplest projects. The Second Avenue subway is the textbook case. What was meant to be a straightforward 2-mile extension ended up costing more than $4.5 billion, making it the most expensive stretch of subway track ever built at over $2 billion per mile. Take a look at this, the Grand Paris Express, currently under construction beneath the French capital. When completed, it'll stretch for 200 kilometers and serve 3 million passengers a day at 68 new stations. And it's coming in at just over half the cost of the MTA upgrade plan. But this is New York, and New York's going to do what New York's going to do. The capital plan may just go to plan. With such a massive amount of investments, it's reasonable to expect a decent upgrade in service. But even if every dollar is well spent, the subway's never going to be perfect. But you know what? That's fine, because the New York subway has its own magic, something that goes beyond regular punctual trains. For all its faults, it's as much a part of New York as sky-high buildings or sky-high rent. So whilst we really hope it improves, please, never change. Don't forget that we're inspiring the next generation of subway builders through our investment into BrickBorrow, a fantastic LEGO subscription service. You can learn more and get started today over at brickborrow.com. And as always guys, if you enjoyed this video and you want to watch more from the definitive video channel for construction while you're stuck on the New York subway, make sure you're subscribed to the B1M.